Self-inquiry. According to Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharishi, devotee asked, how is one to realize the self? Maharishi said, whose self? Find out. Devotee asked, mine. But who am I? Maharishi said, find out yourself. Devotee asked, I don't know how. Maharishi said, just think over the question, who is it that says, I don't know? Who is the I in your statement? What is not known? Devotee asked, somebody or something in me. Maharishi said, what is that somebody in whom? Devotee asked, perhaps some power. Maharishi said, find out. Devotee asked, why was I born? Maharishi said, who was born? The answer is the same to all your questions. Devotee asked, who am I then? Maharishi said, smiling, you have come to examine me. You must say who you are. Devotee asked, however much I may try, I do not seem to catch the I. It is not even clearly discernible. Maharishi said, who is it that says that the I is not discernible? Are there two I is in you, that one is not discernible by the other? Devotee asked, instead of inquiring who am I, can I put the question to myself, who are you? Since then my mind may be fixed on you, whom I consider to be God in the form of Guru, perhaps I would be nearer the goal of my quest by that inquiry than by asking myself, who am I? Maharishi said, whatever form your inquiry may take, you must finally come to the one I, the self. All these distinctions made between the I and you, master and disciple, etc., are merely a sign of one's ignorance. The I supreme alone is. To think otherwise is to delude oneself. A story from the Puranas about sage Ribu and his disciple Nigada is particularly instructive in this context. Although Ribu taught his disciple the supreme truth of the one Brahman without a second Nigada, in spite of his erudition and understanding, did not get sufficient conviction to adopt and follow the path of jnana, but settled down in his native town to lead a life devoted to the observance or of ceremonial religions. But the sage loved his disciple as deeply as the later venerated his master in spite of his age. Ribu would the later had outgrown his ritualism. At times the sage went in disguise so that he might observe how Nigada would act when he did not know that he was being observed by his master. On one such occasion, Ribu, who had put on the disguise on a village rustic, found Nigada intently watching a royal procession. Unrecognized by the town dweller Nigada, the village rustic inquired what the bustle was all about, and was told that the king was going in procession. Oh, it is the king. He goes in procession, but where is he? Asked the rustic. There on the elephant, said Nigada. You say the king is on the elephant? Yes, I see the two, said the rustic. But which is the king and which is the elephant? What? Exclaimed Nigada. You see the two, but do not know that the man above is the king and the animal below is the elephant. What is the use of talking to a man like you? Pray be not impatient with an ignorant man like me, begged the rustic. But you said above and below. What do they mean? Nigada could stand it no more. You see the king and the elephant, the one above and the other below, yet you want to know what is meant by above and below, burst out Nigada. If things seen and words spoken can convey so little to you, action alone can teach you. Bend forward and you will know it all too well. The rustic did as he was told. Nigada got on his shoulders and said, "Know it now. I am above as the king, you are below as the elephant. Is that clear enough?" "No, not yet," was the rustic quiet reply. "You say you are above like the king, and I am below like the elephant. The king, the elephant above and below. So far it is clear, but pray tell me what you mean by I and you." When Nigada was thus confronted all of a sudden with the mighty problem of defining the you apart from the I, light down on his mind. At once he jumped down and fell at his master's feet, saying, "Who else but my venerable master Ribu could have thus drawn my mind from the superficialities of physical existence to the true being of self? O benign master, I crave thy blessings. Therefore, while your aim is to transcend here and now these superficialities of physical existence through Atma Vichara, where is the scope for making the distinctions of you and I, which pertain only to the body? When you turn the mind within, seeking the source of thought, where is you and where is the I? You should seek and be the self that includes all. Devotee asks, "But is it not funny that the I should be searching for the I? Does not inquiry, 'Who am I?' turn out in the end an empty formula? Or am I to put the question to myself endlessly, repeating it like some mantra?" Maharishi said, "Self inquiry is certainly not an empty formula. It is more than the repetition of any mantra. If the inquiry, 'Who am I?' were a mere mental questioning, it would not be of much value. The very purpose of self inquiry is to focus the entire mind at its source. It is not, therefore, a case of one I searching for another I. Much less is self inquiry an empty formula, for it involves an intense activity of the entire world to keep it steadily poised in pure self awareness. Self inquiry is the one infallible means, the only direct one, to realize the unconditioned absolute being that you really are." Devotee asked, "Why should self inquiry alone be considered the direct means to jnana?" Maharishi said, "Because every kind of sadhana, except that of Atma Vichara, presupposes the retention of the mind as the instrument for carrying on the sadhana, and without the mind it cannot be practiced. The ego may take different and subtler forms at the different stages of one's practice, but it is it itself never destroyed." When Janka exclaimed, "Now I have discovered the thief who has been running me all along, he shall be dealt with summarily," the king was really referring to the ego or the mind. Devotee asked, "But the thief may well be apprehended by the other sadhanas as well." Maharishi said, "The attempt to destroy the ego or the mind through sadhanas other than Atma Vichara is just like the thief turning out a policeman to catch the thief, that is himself. Atma Vichara alone can reveal the truth that neither the ego nor the mind really exist, and enables one to realize the pure, undifferentiated being of the self or the absolute. Having realized the self, nothing remains to be known, because it is perfect bliss. It is the all." Devotee asked, "In this life beset with limitations, can I ever realize the bliss of the self?" Maharishi said, "That bliss of the self is always with you, and you will find it for yourself if you seek it earnestly. The cause of your misery is not in the life without, it is in you. As the ego, you impose limitations on yourself and then make a vain struggle to transcend them. All unhappiness is due to the ego. With it comes all your trouble. What does it avail you to attribute to the happiness in life the cause of misery which is really within you. What happiness can you get from things extraneous to yourself? When you get it, how long will it last? If you would deny the ego and squelch it by ignoring it, you would be free. If you accept it, will impose limitations on you and throw you into a vain struggle to transcend them. That was how the thief sought to ruin King Janaka. To be the self that you really are is the only means to realize the bliss that is ever yours. Devotee asked, not having realized the truth that the self alone exists, should I not adopt bhakti and yoga margas as being more suitable for purposes of sadhana than vichara marga? Is not the realization of one's absolute being, that is Brahmgyana, something quite unattainable to a layman like me? Maharishi said, Brahmgyana is not a knowledge to be acquired so that acquiring it one may obtain happiness. It is one's ignorant outlook that one should give up. The self you seek to know is merely yourself. Your supposed ignorance causes you needless grief, like that of the 10 foolish men who grieved the loss of the 10th man who was never lost. The 10 foolish men in the parable forded a stream and on reaching the other shore wanted to make sure that all of them had in fact safely crossed the stream. One of the 10 began to count, but while counting others left himself out. I see only 9. Sure enough, we have lost one. Who can it be? He said. Did you count correctly? Asked another, and did the counting himself, but he too counted only 9. One after the other, each of 10 counted only 9, missing himself. We are only 9, they all agreed. But who is the missing one? They asked themselves. Every effort they made to discover the missing individual failed. Whoever he be that is drowned, said the most sentimental of 10 fools, we have lost him. So saying, he burst into tears, and the rest of the 9 followed suit. Seeing them weeping on the river bank, a sympathetic wayfarer inquired for the cause. They related what had happened and said that even after counting themselves several times, they could find no more than 9. On wayfarer guessed what had happened in order to make them know for themselves that they were really 10, that all of them had come safe from the crossing. He told them, let each of you count for himself, but one after the other, serially, 1, 2, 3, and so on, while I shall you give each a bow, so that you all of you may be sure of having been included in the count, and included only once. The 10th missing man will then be found. Hearing this, they rejoiced at the prospect of finding their lost comrade and accepted the method suggested by the wayfarer. While the kind wayfarer gave a blow to each of the 10 in turn, he that got the blow counted himself aloud. 10, said the last man as he got the last blow in his turn. Bewildered, they looked at one another. Who are 10? They said with one voice, and thanked the wayfarer for having removed their grief. That is the parable. From where was the 10th man brought in? Was he ever lost? By knowing that he had been there all the while, did they learn anything new? The cause of their grief was not the real loss of any one of the 10. It was their own ignorance, rather their mere supposition that one of them was lost, though they could not find who he was, because they counted only 9. Such is also the case with you. Truly, there is no cause for you to be miserable and unhappy. You yourself impose limitations on your true nature. to infinite being and then weep that you are but a finite creature. Then you take up this or that sadhana to transcend the non existent limitations. But if your sadhana itself assumes the existence of the limitations, how can it help you to transcend them? Hence, I say, know that you are really the infinite, pure being, the self absolute. You are always that self and nothing but the self. Therefore, you can never be really ignorant of the self. Your ignorance is merely a formal ignorance, like the ignorance of the 10 fools about the lost 10th man. It is this ignorance that caused them grief. Know then that the true knowledge doesn't create a new being for you, it only removes your ignorance. Bliss is not added to your nature, it is merely revealed as your true and natural state, eternal and imperishable. The only way to be rid of your grief is to know and be the self. How can this be unattainable? Hari Om Tat Sat.